All right, so get this. Just days before the 2024 election, Trump pulls this massive rally at Madison Square Garden.
Right.
You know, you sent this in, and it's kind of head-scratcher, right? I mean, New York City. Not exactly a Trump fan club.
No, not really.
What do you make of that location choice?
It's definitely not your typical pre-election play. You know, usually you see candidates in those, like, crucial swing states in the final days.
Right.
New York, like we both know, has been a Democratic stronghold for decades.
Yeah, right. You don't exactly expect to see a sea of red, make America great again hats.
No.
So what's the strategy here?
Well, if we kind of dig a little deeper,
Okay.
I think this rally was about more than just swaying a few votes in New York.
Okay.
It was about sending a message to the entire country and maybe even laying out a vision for a potential second term.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
The article that you shared dives into some pretty shocking moments from this rally.
Yeah.
Starting with just the language used by some of the speakers.
Right.
Tony Hinchcliffe, for example, made some incredibly offensive comments about Puerto Rico. Called it a floating island of garbage.
Wow.
Honestly, it was hard to even read those words.
Yeah, it was certainly inflammatory rhetoric.
Right.
And it raises questions about, like, the role of humor in political discourse. Where do we draw the line between satire and hate speech? And how do these kinds of comments, you know, impact the overall political climate?
Yeah. The Trump campaign actually tried to distance themselves from Hinchcliffe's remarks.
That's interesting.
Which is pretty rare for them.
Yeah.
But the article also mentions other speakers, like David Rem and Grant Cardone,
right,
who also used some pretty strong language.
Yeah.
Even going so far as to call Kamala Harris the devil.
Wow.
And accuse her of having pimp handlers.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
This trend of increasingly divisive and personal attacks in politics is worrisome.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to pay attention to.
Right.
It's not just about winning an argument anymore. It's about demonizing the opponent.
And, you know, this isn't exactly new territory for Trump.
Right.
He's been known to use pretty harsh language towards his opponents throughout his career. But even by his standards.
Yeah.
Some of the rhetoric at this rally was pretty intense.
Absolutely. It's almost as if the gloves are completely off at this point, you know?
Yeah.
The focus seems to be less on policy debates and more on personal attacks.
Right.
And inflammatory rhetoric.
So amidst all this controversy, there was one thing that surprised me. Trump actually announced a new policy proposal at this rally.
Oh, okay.
He talked about creating a tax credit for family caregivers.
Interesting.
What did you make of that?
It's an interesting move, especially considering the demographic it seems to target, like the sandwich generation, you know?
Right.
Those adults who are caring for both their children and aging parents.
Yeah.
It's a group that often faces significant financial and emotional strain, and it's not a group that's typically associated with Trump's core base.
Yeah, I was surprised too. My own sister is juggling, caring for her kids and her elderly mom.
Right.
And let me tell you, it's not easy.
No.
She's constantly stressed and stretched thin. I wonder if she'd even consider voting for Trump.
Right.
But this policy could definitely catch her attention.
It's a strategic move, that's for sure. It broadens his appeal beyond his usual base and positions him as someone who understands the challenges faced by everyday families.
It's a stark contrast to Kamala Harris's approach, which focuses on federally funded home care.
Yeah, two very different solutions to a growing problem.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what the long-term implications of each approach would be, both for families and for the economy as a whole.
Exactly, and it raises the question, is this tax credit idea a genuine attempt to address a real issue?
Right.
Or is it a calculated campaign tactic designed to attract a specific demographic of voters? I'm sure there will be plenty of debate about that in the coming days.
Well, alongside this new policy proposal, the article mentions that Trump also hit on some of his familiar themes during the rally.
Okay.
Immigration, foreign policy, government waste, usual suspects.
Yes, but what struck me was the way he framed these issues.
Okay.
The rhetoric was even more amplified than usual. He talked about ending the migrant invasion and called for using the death penalty for migrants who kill U.S. citizens.
Wow.
This isn't just about policy differences anymore. It's about tapping into very primal fears and anxiety.
I could definitely see how that kind of language would resonate with a certain segment of the population.
Yeah.
But it's also pretty alarming, right?
Absolutely. It raises serious concerns about the direction of political discourse and the potential for real-world violence.
Speaking of unexpected moments,
yes.
Can we talk about Elon Musk for a second?
Sure.
I mean, what was he doing there?
That was definitely one of the more surprising aspects of this rally. Musk introducing Melania Trump. It's not exactly an image you typically associate with either of them.
Right. It's like two worlds colliding.
Yeah.
And the article mentions that Musk is on board with this idea of a government efficiency commission that Trump is proposing.
Right.
What do you make of that alliance?
Well, Musk is a complex figure with a lot of power and influence.
Sure.
His businesses are deeply intertwined with government regulations and policies.
Right.
So it's not surprising that he'd be interested in shaping those policies to his advantage.
Sure.
A commission focused on government efficiency could potentially streamline regulations and reduce bureaucratic hurdles, which could directly benefit his companies.
So there's a definite self-interest angle there.
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder about the bigger picture. What does this alliance signal about the changing political landscape?
Right.
And the role of tech billionaires in shaping that landscape?
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more tech leaders stepping into the political arena, and their influence is only going to grow.
Okay, so we've got controversial speakers, a new policy proposal aimed at a specific group of voters, and a surprising alliance with a tech billionaire.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to this rally that I found fascinating. Trump's portrayal of New York City.
Oh, yeah. You're right. It was interesting. He usually paints a pretty negative picture of the city, calling it a crime-ridden disaster. But at this rally, he seemed almost nostalgic, talking about going to Yankees games as a kid and praising the city's energy.
Okay.
He even closed out the whole event with Frank Sinatra's New York, New York.
Wow.
What do you think? Is he trying to soften his image a bit?
It's definitely a shift from his usual rhetoric. Maybe he's trying to appeal to those moderate voters who might be turned off by his harsher language.
Right.
Or maybe it's just a case of playing to the crowd, you know, giving them what they want to hear.
It's hard to say for sure, but it's a fascinating contrast to his usual talking points.
Okay.
And speaking of contrast,
Yeah.
the article you shared brings up another one. The comparisons being made between this rally and a pro-Nazi rally that was held at Madison Square Garden back in 1939.
Yeah, that caught my eye, too.
Yeah.
It's a pretty heavy historical parallel to invoke, and it definitely sparked some strong reactions.
It did. To give you some context, this 1939 rally was organized by the German-American Bund,
Right.
a pro-Nazi group that was active in the U.S. before World War II. It drew a massive crowd, and the imagery from that event is pretty chilling.
Wow.
Nazi salutes, swastika banners, and a lot of hateful rhetoric.
Oh, my gosh.
So you can see why drawing comparisons between that rally and Trump's event would be controversial.
For sure. The article mentions that some of Trump's allies dismissed these comparisons as desperate attempts to smear him. Alina Habba, one of his lawyers, even suggests it was just another example of the left trying to silence dissenting voices.
And Hulk Hogan, who was one of the speakers at Trump's rally, denied that there were any Nazis present. But the fact that these comparisons are even being made speaks volumes about the current state of political discourse.
It's a sign of just how polarized and divided our society has become. And it raises some important questions. How do we have productive conversations about politics when we can't even agree on basic facts? How do we bridge these divides when accusations of fascism and Nazism are thrown around so casually?
Those are tough questions, and I don't have easy answers. But I think it's important to acknowledge the power of historical parallels and the way they can shape our understanding of current events, whether you agree with the comparisons or not. They force us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own society and the potential for extremism to take root.
You know, thinking back to the timing and location of this rally, it still strikes me as odd. Why hold a major event in a city that's almost guaranteed to vote against you, especially just days before the election? It's not like he needs the votes in New York to win.
You're right. It's not a typical campaign strategy. And I think that's part of the point. This rally was about more than just winning votes in a single state. It was about controlling the narrative, capturing media attention, and energizing his base.
The article suggests that the choice of Madison Square Garden was deliberate, a way to create a spectacle that would dominate the news cycle.
Exactly, and it worked. Even those of us who aren't Trump supporters were talking about this rally. It generated headlines, sparked debates, and kept Trump front and center in the public consciousness.
And let's be honest, the visuals from that rally were pretty striking.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan, Elon Musk, Melania Trump. In a rare appearance, it was designed to be a media event.
Absolutely. And in today's fragmented media landscape, where attention spans are short and the competition for eyeballs is fierce, that kind of spectacle can be incredibly effective.
Right.
It doesn't matter if everyone agrees with the message. The goal is to be seen and heard, to stay relevant in a world of constant information overload.
So we've talked about the controversial speakers, the new policy proposal, Elon Musk's surprise appearance, the comparisons to the 1939 rally, and the strategic significance of holding this event in New York.
Yeah.
What stands out to you the most? What's the one thing you think listeners should really take away from this deep dive?
For me, it's the bigger picture that this rally reveals.
Okay.
It's like a snapshot of the current state of American politics. The deep divisions, the increasingly harsh rhetoric, the blurring of lines between entertainment and politics, the growing influence of tech billionaires. It's all there on full display.
It's a lot to process, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it can be tempting to just tune it all out, to disengage from the political noise.
Sure.
But I think it's more important than ever to stay informed, to engage in the thoughtful discussions, and to hold our leaders accountable.
I agree. This rally, with all its complexities and contradictions, is a reminder that we're all part of this story, whether we like it or not. Our choices matter. Our voices matter. And the future of our democracy depends on our willingness to engage in a meaningful way.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the spectacle of it all. The big names, the shocking statements, the media frenzy. But what I keep coming back to is this question. What does this rally tell us about where we are as a country?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think this rally, with all its noise and bluster, is a reflection of the deep anxieties and uncertainties that many Americans are feeling right now. We're living in a time of rapid change, economic instability, political polarization, and it's creating this sense of unease that's easily exploited by politicians who offer these simple solutions to complex problems.
And it feels like those simple solutions often involve blaming others, whether it's immigrants, political opponents, or some other, enemy group. It's easier to point fingers than to actually address the root causes of these complex issues.
Exactly. And that's what makes events like this rally so concerning. Tap into those existing fears and resentments, and they amplify them, creating this climate of hostility and division. It's a dangerous game, and it's one that we've seen play out in other countries with devastating consequences.
So where do we go from here? How do we have productive conversations about these important issues? Without resorting to the kind of divisive rhetoric we saw at this rally. How do we bridge these divides and find common ground? It feels like we're talking past each other more than we're talking to each other.
I think it starts with recognizing that we're all in this together. We may have different opinions, different backgrounds, different beliefs, but we all share a common stake in the future of this country. And that means finding ways to listen to each other, to understand each other's perspectives, and to find solutions that work for everyone, not just for a select few.
It sounds so simple, but it's incredibly difficult to do in practice. Especially in the current political climate. It's like we're all stuck in our own echo chambers, surrounded by people who agree with us. And we're increasingly reluctant to engage with those who hold different views.
That's true, but I think there are ways to break out of those echo chambers. It starts with being willing to step outside of our comfort zones, to engage with people who challenge our assumptions, to listen with an open mind, and to be willing to change our own perspectives. When presented with new information, it's not easy, but it's essential if we want to move forward as a society.
I appreciate you sharing your insights on this. It's been a fascinating deep dive into this rally.
Absolutely.
And what it might tell us about the state of American politics. Any final thoughts for our listener as they continue to navigate this complex landscape?
I'd say stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Don't let the noise and the negativity drown out your own voice. Remember that you have the power to make a difference, whether it's through voting, volunteering, having difficult conversations with friends and family, or simply by staying informed and engaged in the issues that matter to you.
Well said. It's been a thought-provoking conversation, and I hope our listeners have found it valuable as well.
Me too.
As always, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.